A man sits alone at 55 in a quiet, dimly lit apartment, staring at a phone that hasn't rung in weeks. He spent 30 years sacrificing his health, his sanity, and his true passions for people who forgot his name the moment he stopped being useful. He thought he was doing everything right. He thought loyalty was automatically rewarded, that being soft and agreeable brought genuine love, and that building a life of pure comfort was the ultimate victory. But in one brutal, icy second, the illusion shattered. He realized he had traded his youth, his power, and his freedom for a lie. There are 10 invisible, merciless realities governing your existence right now, whether you choose to acknowledge them or not. Most men spend their best years running on a hamster wheel, totally blind to these laws, only to hit a wall of agonizing regret when it is far too late to rebuild. What if you could bypass those decades of silent suffering? What if the things you are desperately chasing right now are the exact traps guaranteeing your weakness? Stay with me, because what you are about to hear isn't designed to soothe your fragile feelings, it is designed to wake you up before time runs out. The first brutal reality that breaks a man when he learns it too late is this: the world does not care about your potential, your good intentions, or your quiet suffering. The world only rewards your execution. You can spend 10 years dreaming about the man you want to become. You can carry noble intentions in your heart, cry over your struggles in private, and promise yourself that tomorrow will be different. But reality remains completely unmoved by your internal monologue. Society, nature, and fate do not judge you by what you intended to do, they judge you solely by what you actually build, endure, and conquer. Consider the forgotten story of Bion of Borysthenes. Bion was born at the absolute bottom of ancient society. His father was a freed slave who was caught cheating tax records, and as punishment, his entire family was sold into public slavery. Bion was bought by a harsh, wealthy rhetorician who treated him like property. Bion could have spent his youth weeping over his tragic luck. He could have blamed society, cursed his parents, and let bitterness consume his soul. He had every valid excuse in the world to be a victim. Instead, Bion observed his master quietly. He realized that complaining brought zero freedom, and tears bought zero respect. Bion disciplined his mind, learned philosophy in secret, and studied human nature with ruthless precision. When his master died, leaving Bion a small inheritance in his will, Bion didn't waste a single coin on comfort. He immediately bought his full freedom, walked straight to Athens, and spent his life building a reputation as one of the sharpest, most unshakable minds of his era. When people asked him about his brutal, tragic childhood, Bion looked at them with cold, clear eyes and said, "My misfortune was the very engine that taught me how to walk like a free man." Let that sink in. Nobody is coming to save you. No mentor, no partner, no lucky break, and no government is going to step in and fix your life for you. The cavalry isn't on the horizon. If you do not build your own strength, if you do not master your own discipline, you will be crushed by the weight of your own excuses. This leads directly into the second harsh reality that most men discover only after their spirit has been repeatedly broken. Being a nice man will never gain you respect, it will only invite people to walk all over you. Modern culture lies to young men. It tells them that if they are sweet, agreeable, passive, and never cause conflict, the world will treat them with kindness and admiration. But there is a massive, dangerous difference between a peaceful man and a harmless man. A harmless man is weak because he has no teeth. He doesn't avoid conflict out of virtue, he avoids conflict because he is terrified of confrontation. People can sense that fear from a mile away. They will take his time, disrespect his boundaries, and treat his kindness as a weakness to be exploited. A peaceful man, however, possesses immense power, discipline, and the capacity for violence or fierce defense, but he chooses to keep that power under absolute control. Look at the life of Bias of Priene, one of the legendary 7 sages of ancient Greece. Bias was known throughout the Mediterranean as a man of profound gentleness and wisdom. He helped the poor, resolved disputes peacefully, and spoke with calm grace. One afternoon, a wealthy, aggressive merchant walked up to Bias in the crowded marketplace, insulted his family, and challenged his authority in front of dozens of onlookers. The merchant expected Bias to shrink back, apologize, or try to politely smooth things over like a harmless old man. Bias didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He turned his head, locked his eyes onto the merchant with a cold, terrifying intensity, and delivered a short, surgical truth about the merchant's corrupt business deals that exposed his shame to the entire city. The merchant turned pale, trembled, and backed away without saying another word. Bias looked at the quiet crowd and said calmly, "Gentleness without power is merely cowardice in disguise. True virtue requires a sword at your hip, even if you never draw it. If you want respect, you must build competence, strength, and firm boundaries. You must be willing to say no without offering a dozen nervous apologies. You must be willing to let people be disappointed in you when their demands violate your principles. When you show the world that you cannot be intimidated, manipulated, or pushed around, you stop being a footstool and start being a force." That brings us to the third harsh reality that rots a man's life from the inside out: your obsession with comfort is secretly destroying your spirit. We live in the softest, most comfortable era in human history. With a single tap on a screen, you can order hot food to your door, watch endless entertainment, and numb every uncomfortable emotion with cheap digital dopamine. We spend our lives hiding in climate-controlled rooms, wearing soft clothes, avoiding physical labor, and running away from any form of mental or physical friction. And yet, depression, anxiety, and feelings of utter worthlessness are at an all-time high among men. Why? Because the human brain was not designed for perpetual ease. Your ancestors survived by hunting, building, fighting, and enduring harsh winters. When you strip all friction away from your life, your mind begins to turn on itself. You become fragile, lazy, hypersensitive, and easily broken by the smallest inconvenience. Consider the ancient Spartan king, Agesilaus II. Agesilaus was king of one of the most powerful military states in the ancient world. He had access to vast riches, soft beds, and endless servants. Yet, even in his 70s, when Agesilaus traveled across Greece on military campaigns, he refused to sleep inside luxurious palaces. He slept on the bare, hard ground wrapped in a simple coarse cloak, side by side with his youngest soldiers. When foreign diplomats arrived to meet the legendary king of Sparta, they were shocked to find an old man sitting in the dirt, eating plain barley bread, looking as lean and hardened as a wolf. When asked why a king would choose to live like a beggar, Agesilaus smiled and said, "It is easy to master others when you have already mastered your own desire for comfort. The man who needs nothing cannot be conquered." Let that sink in. If you do not voluntarily choose hard things every single day, if you do not push your body, discipline your diet, wake up early, and force your mind to do difficult work, the world will make sure your life becomes hard anyway. But because you never trained for it, you will crumble. Comfort is a slow, silent killer. Stepping into the cold, lifting the weight, and doing the hard work is the only path to true mental freedom. This leads directly into the fourth brutal reality that most men realize only after losing years to heartbreak and betrayal: you cannot fix, save, or change another human being who does not want to change themselves. How many years of your life have you wasted trying to rescue people who were addicted to their own chaos? How many times have you poured your energy, your money, and your sanity into trying to fix a broken partner, a lazy friend, or a toxic family member, telling yourself, "If I just love them enough, if I just support them enough, they will finally wake up"? The Stoics called this the illusion of control. You do not own other people's choices. You do not control their character. You cannot force a person to respect themselves, to work hard, or to act with integrity if their soul desires destruction. When you attempt to carry someone else's burden while they refuse to walk on their own 2 feet, you don't save them, you simply drown alongside them. Look at the story of Crates of Thebes, a brilliant philosopher who surrendered a massive fortune to live a life of total freedom. A young man once came to Crates weeping, begging the philosopher to help him change his irresponsible, destructive lifestyle. The young man promised he wanted to be disciplined, but every night he returned to drinking, gambling, and ruining his family's reputation. Crates listened to the young man's tearful plea, then picked up a heavy wooden staff and pushed the young man away. Crates looked at him with cold detachment and said, "If you truly desired to change, you would not be begging me for a miracle. You would be waging war against your own desires. Do not ask me to carry your soul when you refuse to lift your own feet. Stop playing the savior. Stop burning your life down to keep other people warm. Offer help to those who are actively doing the work to help themselves, but walk away from those who use your kindness as an excuse to stay weak. Now, prepare yourself for the fifth harsh reality, the reality that governs your relationship with time, success, and your own mortality. Consider what happens when a man spends 40 years chasing a destination that doesn't exist, sacrificing his health and his family for a reward that turns out to be hollow. Most men live their lives in a state of deferred existence. They tell themselves, "I will finally be happy when I get that position. I will finally relax when I buy that house. I will start enjoying life when I reach that financial milestone." They treat the present moment as a cheap stepping stone, a nuisance to be rushed through on the way to some magical future. But the future is a fantasy. When you arrive at that milestone, your brain simply resets the goalpost. The high fades in 24 hours, the anxiety returns, and you realize you have spent decades running toward a horizon you can never touch. The Stoic master Panicius used to remind his students that life is not a race to a finish line, life is the quality of your movement right now. We have exposed the first 5 brutal realities that strip away modern illusions: the truth about your execution, the myth of the nice man, the danger of comfort, the trap of trying to save others, and the disease of deferred living. These 5 truths alone have the power to dismantle decades of bad programming. When we continue, we will step straight into the remaining 5 harsh realities, truths that reveal the terrifying nature of envy, the secret mechanism of emotional control, how to handle sudden financial collapse, and the final, ultimate reality that every single man must face before his time runs out. Whenever you are ready to reveal the remaining truths and claim your absolute clarity, let me know to continue, and we will step directly into the second part. Let's step directly into the 6th harsh truth. A truth that hurts more than physical pain because it involves the people you sit with at dinner every single night. The people closest to you do not always want to see you win. In fact, your success secretly terrifies them. This sounds cynical, but human psychology carries a dark, hidden mechanism. When you are struggling, lazy, or broken, people love to support you. It makes them feel superior. It boosts their ego to give you advice and throw you a few scraps of pity. But the moment you start working hard, the moment you fix your body, build your wealth, and step out of the dirt, a quiet, poisonous resentment begins to grow in their hearts. Your transformation is a giant, glowing mirror held up to their own laziness. Every win you achieve exposes their failure to try. Every habit you fix highlights their lack of discipline. And because they do not have the courage to elevate their own lives, their subconscious mind will try to pull you back down into the bucket. Look at the ancient story of Dion of Syracuse. Dion was a nobleman of Syracuse and the dedicated student of Plato. He was famous for his deep virtue, his physical strength, and his uncompromising moral standards. When Dion returned from exile and successfully freed Syracuse from a corrupt tyrant, he brought a trusted Athenian brother-in-arms named Callippus with him. Callippus was Dion's closest friend. They had marched together, shared meals, slept in the same military tents, and fought side by side in bloody battles. Dion trusted Callippus with his life, his family, and his deepest secrets. But as Dion's reputation grew across Greece, Callippus's heart turned to black ash. He couldn't stand being second. He couldn't stomach the fact that the citizens looked at Dion with reverence while ignoring him. So Callippus began to plot. He used Dion's absolute trust against him. While smiling in Dion's face every morning, Callippus was quietly whispering rumors to soldiers, bribing guards, and organizing an assassination squad inside Dion's own home. On a warm summer afternoon, while Dion was sitting unguarded in his private courtyard, Callippus sent mercenaries into the house to murder his closest friend in cold blood. When Dion saw Callippus standing in the doorway watching him die, his last words were not a scream of pain, but a quiet, heartbroken sigh of realization. I guarded myself against my enemies, but I forgot to guard myself against my friends. Let that sink in. Be careful who you share your dreams with. Be careful whose advice you take. Pay close attention to who doesn't clap when you win. When you start elevating your life, do not expect applause from the people who are comfortable with your weakness. Keep your moves quiet, build your empire in silence, and let your results speak for themselves. This leads directly into the seventh harsh reality that most men learn only after losing everything they worked for. Anger is not a display of strength, it is a confession of ultimate weakness. In modern society, young men often confuse rage with power. They think shouting, slamming doors, flexing their muscles, and losing their temper makes them look dangerous and respected. But losing your temper is simply an admission that you have lost control over your own mind. When you get angry at an insult, a mistake, or a setback, you hand total emotional leverage to the external world. You are telling everyone in the room, my inner peace is so fragile that you can break it with a single sentence. Consider the catastrophic mistake of Alexander the Great at the height of his conquests in Samarkand. Alexander was sitting at a grand banquet surrounded by his top generals, drinking heavy wine. Among them was Clitus the Black, the legendary commander who had saved Alexander's life years earlier at the Battle of the Granicus by chopping off an enemy's arm just before it struck Alexander's helmet. As the wine flowed, Clitus grew irritated with Alexander's arrogance. He spoke up and began criticizing the king, arguing that Alexander was taking all the credit for victories that were won by the blood of his soldiers. Alexander's ego flared like a violent fire. His eyes turned red with rage. His generals tried to restrain him, but Alexander broke free, snatched a spear from a guard's hand, and drove it directly through the chest of Clitus, the man who had saved his life. The room went dead silent. As the wine cleared from Alexander's brain, he looked down at the bleeding body of his loyal friend lying on the floor. A wave of agonizing horror hit him. Alexander collapsed onto the body, weeping hysterically, trying to pull the spear out and turn it on himself. He spent 3 days locked in his tent, refusing food and water, screaming into the dark, completely broken by his own uncontrolled rage. He had conquered the Persian Empire, defeated millions of soldiers, and marched to the ends of the known world, but he could not conquer his own temper. In 10 seconds of blind fury, he destroyed something no enemy army could ever touch. Every time you react in anger, you make a terrible situation 10 times worse. Anger blinds your judgment, ruins your relationships, and destroys your authority. When someone tries to provoke you, look at them with cold, unwavering stillness. The man who remains completely calm while everyone else is panicking or screaming is the most dangerous, respected man in the room. Now, step into the eighth brutal truth that broken men realize only when their youth is gone: money will never fix a broken soul, it will only amplify who you already are. Society trains men to believe that wealth is the ultimate cure-all. You tell yourself, if I just make $1 million, all my anxiety will vanish. If I buy that car, if I live in that house, I will finally feel complete. Money is merely fuel. It is an amplifier. If you are a disciplined, grounded, wise man, money gives you the tools to build a legacy, protect your family, and serve your community. But if you are insecure, chaotic, and empty on the inside, money simply gives you a bigger stage to destroy yourself on. Look at the bizarre, tragic life of Marcus Gavius Apicius, a famous Roman citizen who lived during the reign of Tiberius. Apicius was born into incredible wealth. But instead of using his fortune to build something meaningful, he became obsessed with pure, decadent indulgence. He spent his life hunting for the most extravagant, expensive food in the ancient world. He spent over 100 million sesterces, a sum that could have fed entire cities, eating flamingo tongues, camel heels, and rare fish preserved in costly spices. His entire sense of self-worth was built on his ability to consume luxury. One day, Apicius sat down with his accountant to audit his vast fortune. The accountant informed him that after years of wild spending, he had only 10 million sesterces left. 10 million sesterces was still a massive fortune, enough to live in absolute comfort for the rest of his life. Do you know what Apicius did? He panicked. He looked at his remaining millions, decided that living on only 10 million sesterces would be an unbearable life of poverty and humiliation, walked into his kitchen, mixed a cup of deadly poison, and drank it to end his own life. Let that sink in. He died not because he had no food, but because his soul was completely hollow. He had become a slave to his own luxury. If you do not build an unbreakable inner mind, no amount of money, fame, or material possessions will ever fill the void inside your chest. Wealth is a wonderful tool to command, but a horrifying master to serve. This brings us directly to the ninth harsh reality that men realize only when their body begins to fail them. Your health is your absolute foundation, and if you destroy it, nothing else in this life matters. When a man is young, he treats his body like a machine with infinite fuel. He skips sleep, eats toxic food, sits for 12 hours a day, abuses substances, and ignores his physical maintenance in the name of chasing money or pleasure. He sacrifices his health to gain wealth. And then, 40 years later, he spends every single penny of his wealth trying to buy back a tiny fraction of his health. Think about the chilling final words of the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus. Severus was a ruthless, unstoppable military commander. He fought his way to the top of the Roman Empire, consolidated total power, expanded the borders, and accumulated wealth beyond human imagination. He owned palaces, gold, armies, and territories spanning 3 continents. Yet, in his final years, Severus was struck by a severe, agonizing case of chronic gout and physical decay. He was in such intense physical agony that he could not walk, ride his horse, or even stand without screaming in pain. He had to be carried into battle on a litter by his soldiers. On his deathbed in the freezing outpost of Eboracum, surrounded by golden statues and imperial silk, Severus looked down at his ruined, decaying body, picked up the imperial crown, and whispered with his final breath, "I have been everything, and it was worth nothing." A healthy man wants 10,000 different things, a better car, a bigger house, more success, more fame. But a sick man wants only one single thing, to stop the pain. Do not trade your physical body for temporary prizes. Eat clean food. Lift heavy weights. Walk in the sun. Protect your sleep. Guard your nervous system. Your body is the only house you are guaranteed to live in for the rest of your days. If you let it fall into ruin, you will become a prisoner inside your own skin. Now, prepare yourself for the 10th and final harsh truth, the ultimate reality that cuts through every lie you have ever told yourself. Death is not waiting for you at the very end of the road, death is consuming you right now, second by second. Most men live with a dangerous, subconscious assumption that they have unlimited time. You speak as if you are going to live for 10,000 years. You push your dreams into the distant future, telling yourself, "I'll fix my life when I'm older. I'll spend time with my children next year. I'll start that project when the timing is perfect." You treat your time as if it were cheap dirt, wasting hours on brainless distractions, useless arguments, and living for the approval of strangers. The ancient Stoics had a radical, terrifying understanding of time. They realized that death is not a future event that arrives at the end of your life. Every hour that passes right now is an hour that has already been handed over to death. You are dying every single day you breathe. Consider the strange, daily ritual of Sextus Pacuvius, a wealthy Roman governor who lived in Syria. Every single evening, after finishing his dinner and drinking wine with his friends, Pacuvius would have his servants place him on a wooden bier. His servants would carry him through his palace in a complete mock funeral procession, burning incense, carrying torches, while musicians played mournful funeral flutes. As he was carried through his halls, his servants would chant out loud in Greek, "He has lived his life. He has lived his life." Pacuvius did this every single night for years. When his friends asked him why he performed such a dark, bizarre ceremony every evening, Pacuvius replied, "When I close my eyes at night after my funeral, I know that I have finished my life. And if the gods grant me one more morning, I receive that new day not as an expectation, but as an absolute, unearned miracle. Imagine how you would live your life if you adopted that exact mindset starting tomorrow morning. How would you speak to your family if you knew today might be your last conversation? How hard would you work on your goals if you knew you were not guaranteed another year? How much time would you waste scrolling on a screen if you realized that every wasted hour is a piece of your life you are burning to ash? Stop living as if you have infinite time. Wake up to the sacred weight of the present moment. Cut the noise, kill your excuses, take action on your life today, and build a mind that is ready for whatever FA delivers. The truths have been laid bare. The choices sit squarely in your hands. If you are ready to stop letting the world dictate your identity, and you want to master the unshakable laws of internal order, discipline, and absolute self-mastery, do not let this moment pass you by. Subscribe right now to the Stoic Path for more powerful, life-altering content designed to forge your mind into an invincible fortress. Wake up to the truth, master your time, and reclaim your power today.